Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today's order of business is going to be Brandon Sanderson books recommended to you guys based on the other types of books you like to read. I've read kind of an insane number of Brandon Sanderson books at this point. The only ones of his that I haven't read, besides the new ones that are coming out, the Secret Project books, are the Second Era Mistborn, and I'm pretty sure that is it. And Elantris. I have not read all of Elantris. I have read about half of it. So those are the only books of his that I have not currently read. So I have a fairly large repertoire to draw from. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to suggest different Brandon Sanderson books based on other genres of fiction that you may like. And for those of you that are coming in brand new to Sanderson, hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of where you could start to find something that might be the right read for you. Just for the record, I'm literally just going to be doing this like the whole time now that I have a spinny chair. Let's start with literary fiction. Now, literary fiction, what I think of is stories that have very heavy on kind of themes and atmosphere and just are great examples of storytelling, oftentimes in a shorter-esque version than we usually see in fantasy. And the immediate recommendation that I'm going to have for any of you that love reading literary fiction, if you're looking for something from Brandon Sanderson's point of view, I'm going to recommend The Emperor's Soul. This is a tiny little book, and it's honestly one of my favorites of his. It's about a woman named Shai, who is a art forgery criminal in a fantasy world, and she is caught, basically, and they give her an ultimatum that she has to forge something for the emperor or lose her life. This tiny little book packed such a punch for me. I remember reading it and just being like, wow, this is Sanderson when he's condensed down to a nutshell version. It's amazing and I love it. So this book honestly has a lot of literary fiction vibes to me. It has kind of an old soul vibe that I found a little bit different than a lot of his other work. So this one is just a bite-sized version I recommend this one for anyone who just wants to get a taste of Sanderson without having to commit to, 1,200 pages. If you are a fan of literary fiction, this is the Brandon Sanderson novel that I would recommend for you. Okay, next up, we're gonna jump over to the mystery/thriller genre. Now this one, there's a couple different options and places you could start with very different tones. So the first one that I'm gonna recommend is one of my personal favorite Sanderson books that gets almost no attention on BookTube, honestly, and that is Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds. This is a story of a young man who's a savant and he hallucinates different people with very specific skill sets that help him solve mysteries/crime. This book is, in my opinion, one of Brandon Sanderson's most beautiful representations of mental health. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it's, again, a book that I really don't hear a lot of people talking about. Stephen is a really interesting character, but the characters that surround him, that are these hallucinations that help him solve these crimes, are just so beautifully, it's a Motley Crue kind of vibe, but within a soft thriller. This isn't going to be a hard thriller. You're not going to have like really intense murder mystery kind of feel from this one. But this is a book that I absolutely loved when I read it, and I think anybody who enjoys a mystery or a soft thriller would really get along well with this book. If you're looking for something on the fantasy side of mystery and thriller, then I'm going to recommend that you start with Mistborn, which is probably his most well-known work. It's a gateway fantasy for a lot of people. It is incredibly accessible fantasy to read, and as you can tell, they are epic fantasy, but they're not massively chonkerish, which is kind of nice. Mistborn is equal parts a story of a kind of destroyed aftermath of a nation meets heist story. The main character, Vin, is a street urchin who kind of gets thrown into this revolutionary rebellion that's happening against the Lord Emperor of the world, and there's a lot of really great, intense kind of heist and underground kind of vibes to this. There's just a great variety of characters in this book too, and the world has that kind of dark grittiness to it that I think we love so much about this genre. So if you're looking for something with more of a fantasy bent, I am definitely going to recommend Mistborn. Now, if you're looking to get into really big, chonker epic fantasy, or you're coming from a more classics and kind of historical fiction side of the world, this is where I'm going to recommend the Stormlight Archive, which is Brandon Sanderson's massive epic fantasy series. There are currently 4 books available in the series. This book, the reason why I recommend this for people who love historical fiction and ish classics is because you're already used to a very detailed world. In classics, there's a lot of description, there's a lot of things to keep track of. In historical fiction, you're used to having a world that has a lived-in feel to it because it's the one that we know. I think that Sanderson does a really good job of detailing the world of the Stormlight Archive. There's just so much to it as an environment, and the characters moving through it. It's just on a different scale, honestly. I think the classics readers are going to appreciate the characters moving through a very detailed world. The one caveat that I will make to this is if you go into the Stormlight Archive expecting the same kind of prose level as you get in a lot of classics, that is not what I'm recommending this for, because Brandon Sanderson's prose is incredibly straightforward. He holds your hand through the entire book, and it's not going to be dense amounts of descriptions, but there are a lot of details in the world building. Let's talk about YA. If you're coming from the YA side of the world and you enjoy the really intense, passionate younger protagonists, I am going to recommend Skyward. Skyward is honestly, again, one of those books that of Brandon Sanderson's that really surprised me about how much I loved it. I know that he also has the Reckoners trilogy. That one did not land for me personally. If you're interested in finding more about the Reckoners, definitely go check out the reviews that I'm sure are all over YouTube. I absolutely love this book. This is a science fiction fantasy about a young girl whose father was a traitor, and she's growing up in that kind of shadow, and she wants to be a fighter pilot. She wants to help protect her people from the alien race that is constantly kind of badgering them after a big war. This one definitely gives some faint Ender's Game kind of vibes. It has a, in my opinion, really solid protagonist, which is something that's always a hard sell for me. Usually I end up liking more of the side characters, but Spensa is a really great character, and some of the non-human characters in this book, in my opinion, are where it really shines. But overall, it's a magic school vibe. She has to go and learn how to be a pilot, and she's thrown in with all of these other kids her age, and some of them like her and some of them don't. It's a typical school kind of situation. This is one that I would immediately recommend for somebody who's looking for a YA style read. So the last one. The last category that I'm going to recommend a book for is going to be a little bit on the nose, because romance is not something that Sanderson is incredibly well known for. In my opinion, it's one of the weaker areas of his writing style. Romance is just not his forte or his focus, and that's fine. But for any of you who do like a good romance and you're looking through all these Brandon Sanderson books and you're like, where do I start? This book includes my favorite romance out of any Brandon Sanderson book, and it also includes a really beautiful magic system that deals with breath and light, and it's really kind of adds to that atmosphere, I guess, while also having some very dark, perilous threads through it as well. And that is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. There are 2 sisters in a remote country who, one of them is promised to be the wife of this kind of god king. And there's a mix-up that happens and things don't go the way that they're supposed to, and we are now transported to this other bigger country where the God King rules. It's not like the entire book is a romance. However, there is a very beautiful, pure romance that exists in this book, and I absolutely loved it when I read it. It's the most invested in a romantic relationship that I have been in any of Sanderson's novels, and I found it really quite beautiful. So if you do like a bit of romance in your books, then I would definitely start with Warbreaker. The other thing I will say here at the end of the video is that a lot of Sanderson's books are included in one giant universe called the Cosmere. Now there are tons of videos about the Cosmere, so go check those out if you're interested in knowing how all of these things fit together. But the cool part is that there are threads that tie a lot of these books together. So if you really like Warbreaker, you may find that there are a few threads popping up in the Stormlight Archive that you can find if you're really looking and interested in seeing how his work as a whole all ties together. I'm pretty sure that Legion is the only one not tied to the Cosmere at this point, but I could be wrong about that, and if I am, Sandersonians, you let me know down in the comments. But overall, they're pretty much all tied together, and it's kind of a cool little treasure hunt if you know what you're looking for. So again, if you are a Sanderson reader and you would like to put down in the comments some recommendations of Sanderson books based on other genres, feel free to add your voice to this conversation that we're having here. If you're brand new to Sanderson, just pick something and go with it. I hope that this video helps you decide which of the options would be a good fit for you and that you have a great time reading it. I hope you are all having a great week. I hope you are all having 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.